Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, the flight diverted after a violent attack. This comes as hundreds of flights have been canceled as deadly storms push into the Northeast. A father, mother, and child killed when a tree fell on their car during a heavy rainstorm in Tennessee. Also tonight, Tropical Storm Erin on track to become the first Atlantic hurricane of the season, possibly a major hurricane by this weekend. How close will it come to the U.S. and what you need to know if you're heading to the beach this weekend. Stop fire. Newly released video of the deadly shooting outside a casino in Reno. Police immediately under fire as they arrive on the scene. The gunman hiding behind the tire of a truck. The National Guard taking a position near the National Mall. Military vehicles parked near the Washington Monument. President Trump now saying he wants his takeover of the D.C. police force to be long-term. Getting ready for that momentous meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin as we talk with the sister of a man currently being held in Russia. What is your message for President Trump? If he's listening right now and you have this opportunity to talk to him, what would you say?
Please bring our brother home. He's been suffering. He's innocent. We really need your help in getting him home. It's been way too long.
And the American teenage pilot stranded for weeks in Antarctica and why Chilean authorities are refusing to let him go. And our Linsey Davis talks with Jeffrey Wright, who can't wait for the world to see his newest project with Spike Lee.
He is so dedicated to film, to the process, and so dedicated to the city of New York. And to see him film in New York is really to understand on a different level.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
And good evening to you on this Wednesday. I'm Gio Benitez in for Linsey Davis. It is good to see you. Thanks for streaming with us. We're going to begin here with the dangerous storms moving up the East Coast from Alabama to New Jersey. More than 20 million people are under a flood watch tonight. Already deadly flash floods in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Look at that right there, claiming at least 3 lives. A family killed when a large tree fell on their SUV. And overnight, swift water teams racing to rescue at least 35 people after the city experienced its second wettest day in history. Plus, we are watching the tropics. That's Tropical Storm Erin right there, churning up the Atlantic and gathering strength, set to become the first major hurricane of the season. The spaghetti models show the potential paths. It's still far too far to know exactly how close it'll come, but rip currents could be felt all along the East Coast in a few days here. Meteorologist Danny Beckstrom is standing by with a look at what's to come. But first, let's go to our Stephanie Ramos with a look at the damage so far.
Tonight, flood watches for millions in the Northeast after a deadly 24 hours in the South.
Have you seen anything like this?
More than half a foot of rain in the Chattanooga area, flooding Interstate 24.
The highway's filling up. Go, people!
This vehicle floating in high water. A Department of Transportation camera capturing a first responder carrying a person on their back who was trapped in their car to dry land. Chattanooga police say not far from this scene, a man was swept away by floodwaters, later found dead. Just outside Chattanooga in Eastridge, Tennessee, swift water rescue teams working around the clock, rescuing multiple families and their pets from homes. Sadly, in Eastridge, authorities say a mother, father, and child were killed when a large tree fell on their SUV. The ground saturated throughout the region. Another massive tree crashing down just across the state line in Rossville, Georgia. Meanwhile, the East dealing with record-breaking heat in the last 24 hours outside Boston.
It's a very hot night in the city, and our gear is great, but it traps our heat.
Multiple firefighters had to be treated for heat exhaustion after fighting this massive 5-alarm fire in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Temperatures over 90 degrees.
They work very hard, and some of that comes with a little bit of heat exhaustion. So we're going to check up on them, make sure everybody's okay.
And Gio, back here in the Northeast, flight delays and cancellations are mounting due to thunderstorms in the area that are likely to cause flash flooding too. Gio.
And let's get right to Danny Beckstrom now of our New York station WABC. She is tracking it all tonight right here. And Danny, there is a lot to track.
So much to talk about. We're going to start with the flood watches in effect in parts of the south into the northeast. Localized areas could see up to 4 inches of rainfall. Those alerts in parts of Tennessee, parts of Kentucky, as well as Alabama and Georgia expired this evening. But it takes until late tonight up the I-95 corridor from Washington, D.C. into Philly into parts of New Jersey, seeing heavy rainfall that can produce localized flooding, a few isolated strong to severe thunderstorms possible into southern New England. And of course, all eyes are on the Atlantic, right? We are watching Tropical Storm Aaron as it continues to strengthen. Right now, max wind at 50 miles per hour. But that strengthening is expected to take Aaron to the first hurricane of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season by Thursday or Friday, then strengthening into a major Category 3 hurricane by Sunday. That turn to the north is forecast to happen on Monday. But where? That's the question. We have this area of high pressure, the Bermuda High. We have this cold front over the eastern coast of the U.S., and it will wedge between those two areas, but it is simply too early to tell you exactly when and where that will happen. What we do feel confident about is that we expect high rip current risk as well as rough surf up and down the eastern seaboard starting about Wednesday of next week. Gio?
All right, Danny Beckstrom, thank you so much. We are going to turn now to the harrowing moments on board a flight from Norfolk, Virginia to Los Angeles. The flight had to be diverted after a passenger struck a flight attendant and started fighting with fellow passengers. He was restrained twice, but broke free from those restraints. He was arrested when the plane made an emergency landing there in Colorado. Here's ABC's Trevor Ault now.
Tonight, a passenger in custody escorted off his flight after the airline says he started a physical altercation with their flight attendants and other passengers.
They're calling it a level 4 disturbance now. They said they had him restrained, he broke out, and there's passengers holding him down now.
The Breeze Airways flight was traveling from Norfolk, Virginia to Los Angeles this morning. Police say they were told the passenger was intoxicated, yelling racial slurs at the flight attendants and waving around a skateboard.
There's information that he struck a flight attendant, so there is injuries.
According to air traffic control audio, the passenger was restrained 2 separate times, but broke free both times.
The unruly passenger is now free, trying to hit people as well.
The plane then declaring an emergency and diverting to Grand Junction, Colorado, where the airline says it was met promptly by local law enforcement officers who restrained and removed the passenger from the aircraft. Other passengers cheering and booing him. It's the latest of more than 1,000 unruly incidents reported on planes nationwide this year. Last month, a New Jersey man was arrested for allegedly attacking another passenger just after they landed in Miami.
And Trevor Ault joins us now. And Trevor, what do we know about how these flight attendants are doing right now?
Well, the good news is, Gio, we do believe they're doing okay. We've heard from the airline, and they say one flight attendant and another passenger were both evaluated just for minor injuries. Of course, like in so many of these incidents, the FAA is now investigating. Gio?
But minor injuries, thank goodness. All right, Trevor, thank you so much. And 2 days before their high-stakes summit in Alaska, President Trump is issuing a warning to Vladimir Putin, threatening, quote, severe consequences if he does not agree to stop the war in Ukraine. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is weighing in with his own words of warning, telling Trump that the Russian leader is bluffing with no interest in a peace deal. We are checking in with our foreign relations and security analyst for a look at what's at stake. But first, let's get to our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott.
Tonight, 2 days before his high-stakes summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, President Trump speaking with European allies and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to hammer out a strategy.
President Zelensky was on the call. I would rate it a 10, very, very friendly.
Zelensky saying Trump agreed Putin must sign on to a ceasefire. We hope that the central topic of the meeting will be a ceasefire, Zelensky said, an immediate ceasefire. Today, reporters asking the president,
will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
there will be
be? Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
But 5 minutes later, Trump acknowledging he probably won't be able to stop Putin from killing Ukrainian civilians.
Do you believe you can convince him to stop targeting civilians in Ukraine?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've had that conversation with him. I've had a lot of good conversations with him. Then I go home and I see that a rocket hit a nursing home or a rocket hit an apartment building and people are laying dead in the street. So I guess the answer to that is no.
The White House calls Friday's meeting a listening exercise. The president saying it's really about, quote, setting the table for a face-to-face meeting between Putin and Zelensky.
There's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first, because the first is I'm going to find out where we are and what we're doing.
And Rachel joins us now from the White House. And Rachel, did the president put any conditions on that possible second meeting?
He did, Gio. Look, the president said, and he made it clear, he's not sure there is going to be a second meeting. He would like there to be, he said, very close or immediately following this Friday meeting. But that's only if he hears what he needs to from Russian President Vladimir Putin. If he doesn't, he said that meeting may not happen. As for Zelensky, he says that he believes Putin is only bluffing here and that he is not serious about ending this war, Gio.
Rachel Scott there at the White House. Rachel, thank you so much. And for more now on this high-stakes summit, we're joined now by ABC News security contributor and former UK national security official Steve Hill. Steve, it is so great to see you. Thank you for being here. I want to start by asking you about this call between Zelensky, President Trump, and the European leaders. The messaging right now seems to be that the U.S. and Europe have a coordinated plan ahead of the summit.
Yeah, I think both sides are saying very positive things about the summit. President Trump was talking about it being 10 out of 10. And the Europeans will be very pleased that he seems to have taken on board their perspective that you can't trust President Putin and that he really needs to be sort of taking quite a tough line. They'll be very, very pleased about that. But of course, at the same time, they will be nervous that there are 2 days before the summit and President Trump's position may change before that.
And Steve, President Trump had insisted these past days that Ukraine and Russia should swap land as part of a potential deal. But today that tone was different, with the president saying that the focus will be to demand a ceasefire from Putin. What could have prompted this change overnight?
I think he's listening to the people who are talking to him, who are around him. He is understanding after the last few months that you have to judge President Putin by his actions, not by his words, and that means that you have to take quite a tough stance.
President Trump warned of consequences if Russia doesn't stop this war. Two questions here, I guess. First is, Putin, do you think, will he agree to stop the war? And if he doesn't, what potential consequences might we be talking about here?
I expect Putin will be going into this meeting playing for time. I think Putin, he's not afraid of sanctions. He's not afraid of the threat, because the ground suggests, the military events on the ground suggest that actually he's winning at the moment. He's making progress, but he is not wanting Trump to go through with these warnings of severe consequences. That's going to be a real problem for him if Trump does go ahead and do that.
There are so many uncertainties, Steve, surrounding this summit. What do you think the European allies are really expecting here when it comes to President Trump and what he could achieve at this meeting?
The wise money, in my view, will be that there will be some warm words that come out from the summit, talking about essentially another meeting, an ongoing dialogue. But it would be very surprising if it created some decisive move. A ceasefire is probably the best that we could hope for. It seems very unlikely that that would be achieved at this Alaska summit, but perhaps it does set the kind of, as I think the president said, the table might be set for future meetings where we do come to a ceasefire. And then the really tricky part, I mean, President Putin has not shifted for the last 3.5 years on what he wants from this conflict, which is essentially Ukrainian sovereignty being destroyed.
What I find so interesting is that the White House said that it was Putin who actually requested this meeting with President Trump, and that's why Zelensky and the European leaders were actually not invited. So even after this call today, which of course sounds very positive, do you think there is any worry among the European nations right now about what could happen behind closed doors?
Absolutely. I mean, they're not in the room. They are bystanders. They have, I think, the relationship with the president has improved significantly over the last few months. I mean, most notably between President Zelensky and President Trump, but also between the Europeans. And we've got JT Vance at the moment in the English countryside. There's a feeling of kind of real positive momentum at the moment that they're being listened to, but they are not in the room. President Putin, a former KGB officer, is a very persuasive politician and man. There will be a concern that whatever was agreed today, in 2 days' time, the story coming out of the meeting may be very different.
That's right. And as you mentioned, a former KGB officer. All right. ABC News security contributor and former UK national security official Steve Hill. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
A real pleasure. Thank you so much, yeah.
And President Trump says that he will seek long-term control of Washington, D.C.'s police department as the National Guard members descend on the city. The president plans to ask Congress to extend his takeover beyond the 30 days that the current law allows. But there is no limit on how long he can deploy D.C.'s National Guard. The National Guard will ramp up its presence on federal properties tonight, like the National Mall and federal monuments. We are going to turn now to the harrowing images that we're seeing for the first time when a gunman opened fire outside a casino in Reno, killing 3. A short time later, he opened fire on police. Here's ABC's Matt Gutman with the images, and we warn you here, they are disturbing.
For the first time tonight, we're seeing this terrifying shootout between Reno police officers facing off with a gunman on the run after a deadly rampage outside a casino. New body camera video showing officers racing to the scene, immediately taking fire from the suspect. Their vehicle riddled with bullets. Police say the suspect is 26-year-old Dakota Hoover.
Where's the gun? Where's the gun?
He fired around 80 rounds with his handgun. Moments earlier, Hoover had walked up to the valet area of a popular resort and casino just outside downtown Reno and opened fire on a crowd there before taking off. 3 people were killed, several others were wounded.
We're going to leave 3 victims in the valet.
I need an ambulance up here with 1 gunshot wound to the arm and the leg.
Within 2.5 minutes, officers arrived, and in a dramatic gun battle, they wounded Hoover.
All right, and Matt Gutman joins us now. And Matt, do authorities have any clues about a motive here?
In short, Gio, no. They're still investigating whether there was any possible link between that suspect, the victims, and the casino. And they haven't found any yet. They're still searching for a motive. And that suspect, Hoover, he ended up dying in a hospital a couple of days later. And it's just astounding to see the kind of gunfire that police officers faced in that moment, Gio.
Truly. All right, Matt Gutman, thank you so much. And we are also following a deadly shooting near a school bus stop in Louisville, Kentucky. There is a search underway right now. Authorities say that a woman was shot and killed while walking a child to the bus stop. Here's ABC's Ike Ajachi.
Tonight, police in Louisville, Kentucky are urgently searching for this alleged gunman who they say opened fire near children on their way to school, killing a woman as she walked a little girl to the bus stop.
3 shots fired at the bus stop, 1 person on the ground.
Female shot in the chest, back, in front of the library.
The woman rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. The young girl was not hurt.
I'm thinking about the child's hand she was holding. The healing is going to be for a very long time.
Kids should be able to go to school, go to the bus stop in the morning without any fear of gun violence, of having to run for their life in the morning.
It comes just days after surveillance video allegedly shows a 15-year-old opening fire near the same bus stop while children were waiting for the school bus. No one was injured, but that teenager was arrested.
This is the second time in a week that we're talking about this, and it is absolutely pathetic.
Gio, police haven't said if the suspect knew the victim or how she knew the little girl she was taken to the bus stop. Now, officers have been patrolling that bus stop since last week's shooting. Today was the first day they weren't there. Gio?
All right, Ike Ajachi, thank you so much. At least 3 people, including at least 2 children, suffered potentially life-threatening injuries after an Austin area school bus rolled over and crashed on the first day of school. 42 children, look at that right there, and 1 adult, the driver, they were injured. 12 people were transported to local hospitals. It's not clear how many were children, though. The bus originated from an elementary school north of Austin. It was, again, the first day of school. Just so awful for that to happen right there. Air Canada says it will gradually cancel flights as it prepares for a potential flight attendant strike. The union representing Air Canada's 10,000 plus flight attendants sent a strike notice to the airline this morning. A strike or lockout could begin as early as 12:02 a.m. on Friday. Air Canada will start canceling flights tomorrow before halting its flight operations altogether by Saturday. The strike could impact 130,000 customers a day. It's a huge flight, a huge airline there in Canada. Flight attendants say that the airline has refused to negotiate over what they call, quote, poverty wages and unpaid non-flight hours. Meanwhile, Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones revealed he overcame stage 4 cancer after a decade-plus battle with the disease. The 82-year-old says that he was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma, that's a skin cancer, of course, back in 2010. Jones credits an experimental cancer drug called PD-1 inhibitors for saving his life. The drug regulates the immune system to prevent tumors from starting and growing. Jones also revealed that he underwent 2 lung surgeries and 2 lymph node surgeries. We are wishing him well, and we're glad that he is recovering right now. Okay, coming up here on ABC News Live Prime, for nearly 180 years, the Smithsonian Museum has independently curated the history and culture of the U.S., but now the Trump administration is demanding changes to align with its values. And a new poll shows a dramatic shift in how Americans consume alcohol. The numbers, they may surprise you. And later, why a 20-year-old American influencer who says that he was raising money for charity has been stuck in the Arctic for months. Stick around, you're watching Prime on ABC News Live. The Trump administration sent a letter to the Smithsonian Institution late yesterday notifying the nation's museum that the government would be conducting an internal review to ensure the institution is celebrating, quote, American exceptionalism. Let's dig into what that means for the Smithsonian. By the numbers, the Smithsonian was founded in 1846 by Congress as an independent and nonpartisan institution. It is governed and administered by a board of regents and secretary. The institute is comprised of 21 museums in addition to research centers and the National Zoo. The Trump administration specified 8 museums would be the focus of an initial review. They include the National Museum of the American History and the National Museum of the American Indian. The government's letter requires that within 30 days, each museum submits a number of documents, including exhibition descriptions, draft plans for upcoming shows, and internal guidelines on exhibition development. Within 120 days, they're instructed to implement, quote, content corrections to divisive or ideologically driven language across the museums. The administration says museums must reflect America's values, especially ahead of next year's celebrations of the 250th anniversary of the country's founding. In a statement to ABC News, the Smithsonian wrote that they are reviewing the letter from the administration and will, quote, collaborate constructively with the White House. And the statement from the Smithsonian goes on to say that the Smithsonian's work is grounded in a deep commitment to scholarly excellence, rigorous research, and the accurate factual presentation of history. Our next guest is deeply familiar with the administration of museums. Historian and retired professor of museum studies, Marjorie Schwartzer, joins us now. Marjorie, it is good to see you. Thank you so much for spending your night with us here. So I understand you've read the directive from the White House right now. What's your reaction to what the Trump administration is requesting from these 8 Smithsonian museums?
So thank you so much, Gio. I've actually read it several times, and it's very clear that whoever wrote it really doesn't understand museums, doesn't know how they work, doesn't know how they operate, doesn't know how exhibitions are developed, what curators do. And so it really seems to me to be more of a scare tactic or related to some larger initiative about controlling a certain kind of narrative about American history.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about this code of ethics that the Smithsonian uses to guide its work, because I think a lot of people are probably unfamiliar with that.
So all museums operate under a code of ethics, and there are strict codes of ethics for all accredited museums in the country, as well as museums around the world through the International Committee of Museums. The Smithsonian, and particularly the Smithsonian's leadership, have been at the forefront of ethics and these of guiding ethics and of pushing ethics towards authentic history, towards fact-driven history, towards collaboration. All the words that were mentioned in the document that they put out are ethical values that are held by everybody who works within the Smithsonian. They deal with collections, with educational messaging, and with the process, the very complicated and community-driven process of creating exhibitions.
Yeah, and if you've been to a Smithsonian, you know how complicated that must be. The White House says that this review is in accordance with President Trump's executive order, and it's entitled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. What do you make of that overall effort, and is it typical of a U.S. president?
Nothing like this has ever happened in history. There have been instances with a certain exhibition where a senator wanted to score some political points and wanted a certain exhibition to change its direction or change a label, something like that. But nothing like this has ever happened in the history of the U.S. It has happened in other authoritarian countries. I think about the Maoist cultural revolution in China. I think about the Taliban. I think about Khomeini in Iran and so on. But for this to happen in the United States is truly extraordinary.
And as you know, obviously you're a historian. You know how important it is for historians to put things into context, and sometimes explanations about certain things change over time. And over the last 50 years, the Smithsonian, of course, has institutionally changed its lens on American history to broaden that viewpoint from which it's told. Tell us a little bit about those changes.
So those changes really started to bubble up with the bicentennial celebration in 1976 and the expansion of our idea of history and of local history, and away from like great white men and sort of a Christian white paternalistic narrative that I had that from my childhood. I've been going to the Smithsonian since I was a kid. I was brought up in Washington, D.C. So a change from that perspective to a much wider perspective where you bring in multiple voices and multiple perspectives, and you trust the visitor and the public to look at an object and really make their own decision based on facts about what that means. And if we have time, can I give you one example? Do we have time?
Sure, we just have a few seconds, but let's go for it.
Okay, so I'm thinking about when I was growing up in D.C. and would go to the Smithsonian, you never saw anything about slavery, about labor rights, about women, about the Japanese internment. And we really didn't tell that history. And I remember going back to the Smithsonian when I was an adult in the early 1990s and seeing a whites-only water fountain. And I remembered it from my childhood, from growing up in D.C. during the end of the Jim Crow era, but there it was as a museum artifact. And it spoke so powerfully to me, that one object. And that's what the Smithsonian's ace in the hole. They have the objects, they have the evidence. And so what the Smithsonian has been doing is curating and putting the evidence out there and just letting it speak to people and letting elders share those stories with younger people. They really resonate. And there are, I'm going to say, millions of resonant objects that the Smithsonian has. It's an extraordinary institution.
Well, I so appreciate that you spent time with us and actually told that story, because I think that's a very powerful one. Marjorie Schwartzer, thank you so much for joining us here on Prime.
Thank you, Gio.
All right, we appreciate you. And coming up here, Friday's high-stakes meeting between President Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin could feel very personal for one family, the family of David Barnes, a Texas father jailed in Russia for more than 3 years. Tonight, we hear from his sister on efforts to bring him home. And later, how warehouse workers on the late shift helped police track down a suspect. Stick around. You're watching Prime on ABC News Live. And for one family, Friday's meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin may feel very personal. American David Barnes has been jailed in Russia for more than 3 years. Authorities there arrested David after his Russian ex-wife accused him of abusing their 2 children, not in Russia, but in Texas. His ex-wife stands by those allegations, yet Texas authorities say that they investigated the claims and did not find them to be credible. It's a foreign detention case unlike any other. David is now serving a 21-year sentence in Moscow. And David's sister is joining us tonight, Margaret Aaron, joining us from Huntsville, Alabama. Margaret, thank you so much for being here and talking with us. As we said, this meeting is pretty personal for you. It hits close to home. What are you hoping comes out of this summit with Putin?
Well, we hope for better relations between the U.S. and Russia that will hopefully eventually lead to the release of my brother.
Have you actually been able to communicate with David?
We have not had any communication in about 3 weeks. We sometimes he's able to get calls through the embassy, but that hasn't happened in a few weeks.
Do you and your family have any idea how he's doing right now?
He's hanging in there. He has been extremely strong through the last 3.5 years. We're extremely proud of him, and he has continued to be hopeful that that something will happen. We really, really need to have him designated as wrongfully detained, hopefully to start that process. We need the help of Trump and Secretary Rubio to do that.
And Margaret, what was the last conversation you had with him?
That has been over probably 1 year or 2 ago, actually. He talks more to my sister. So he can make one, call, make one phone call. And she has kind of been the focal point for communication with him. So it's been a while since I've actually had a conversation with him.
We've seen a lot of other Americans come home from Russia through prisoner exchanges, of course. We had basketball player Brittany Griner, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, just 2 of them. What has it been like seeing other Americans come home while knowing that David is still there in prison?
It hurts. He's there. He's totally innocent. He's been stuck there for over 3.5 years. And to see these others come home, which I'm thankful. Thankful that there are others coming home, but we really wish David would be included. He needs to be included. He is innocent.
Have you had any conversations with officials in Washington?
No, we have not. Like I said, we have requested for wrongfully detained status from the State Department. We have not heard anything back yet. We need him to be noticed. Actually, I believe the last person that came home, the ballerina Ksenia Karolina, if you recall, she came home back in April. She met with President Trump in the Oval Office and actually gave him a letter in which she thanked him for her release. And also she mentioned David along with 2 other prisoners in the letter and asked for Trump's help in bringing them home.
What is your message for President Trump? If he's listening right now and you have this opportunity to talk to him, what would you say?
Please bring our brother home. He has been suffering. He is innocent. We really need your help in getting him home. It's been way too long.
How are you getting through these days? I mean, it's. I have to say, you have a lot of strength. I'm looking at you now, and you're somehow able to talk about this in a way that I think a lot of other sisters may not be able to talk about their brother who's in prison in Russia. What's getting you through this?
just our hope. And David's strength keeps us going also. He's amazing. So we have to keep our strength up, keep our hope up for him, along with going on with our day-to-day lives.
All right, Margaret, Aaron, thank you so much for your time. We wish you and your family the best as you continue to fight for David's release. We are sending our best your way, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And coming up here, coffee drinkers, listen up. The recall involving potential glass in instant coffee. And there are more than just nuggets now. The podcast heard around the world is now out. We're going to tell you what Taylor Swift has told the world. Stick around. You're watching ABC News Live Prime. The FDA is recalling some instant coffee nationwide because it could contain fragments of glass, the surprising change in America's alcohol drinking habits, and how a beloved hawk made it home after going missing for 15 months. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. Fewer Americans than ever are reporting they drink alcohol, driven in large part by young adults. According to a new Gallup poll, 53% of adults in the poll said that they believe moderate drinking, or 1 to 2 drinks per day, was bad for their health, up from just 28% in 2015. As concerns about health impacts rise, only 54% of U.S. adults report that they consume alcohol, and that's lower than at any other point in the last 3 decades. While Gallup says young adults are leading the trend, other age groups are also increasingly feeling that way. How do we get back again? Justin Bieber has revealed a new music video for First Place off his latest surprise album, Swag, which was released last month. The black and white video shows Bieber taking advantage of the scenery in Iceland, where he recorded much of the album. It's his second music video from the album. Yukon was released just over a week ago. Dollar General is recalling instant coffee sold in its stores because of the potential presence of glass. The recall involves 3 lots of 8-ounce Clover Valley instant coffee sold in 48 states between July 9th and 21st. The FDA said the recall came after a customer notified Dollar General employees of the problem. No injuries or illnesses have been reported so far. Dollar General said it was investigating the source of the contamination and apologized for any inconvenience caused by the issue. Police in California were led on a wild chase through the San Fernando Valley by a driver in a suspected stolen vehicle. The driver was seen speeding erratically and eventually pulled off the highway and abandoned his vehicle before running into a warehouse. At least 2 employees were seen running out as officers surrounded the warehouse. And KABC's helicopter reporter Gabe Santos was right there.
You got to imagine that's an extremely scary situation if you're just working the night shift at a warehouse here and somebody just runs in.
KABC reports that the suspect was later taken into custody. One of the most decorated music artists ever now has a new honor. Beyoncé won her first Emmy Award this week as a costume designer for her Netflix NFL Christmas Day halftime show performance dubbed Beyoncé Bowl. You remember that? She won in the Outstanding Costumes for Variety, Nonfiction, or Reality Programming category. She, of course, adds this to her historic 35 Grammy wins, meaning she's halfway to that rare EGOT distinction earned by winning an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Award. A homecoming more than a year in the making. The Chaffee Zoo in Fresno says its Harris's hawk, Ripley, is home after going missing for 15 months. The zoo said Ripley was chased off by a pair of red-tailed hawks after a bird show in April last year, and they appealed to the community to help track him, to no avail. But in July, a resident in Prather, California, spotted a bird in their yard and called the zoo. Believe it or not, the zoo confirmed, yeah, it was Ripley. The zoo says that Ripley was in remarkably good condition and is now recovering at their veterinary center. Go Ripley. Ripley's Believe It or Not. All right, a 20-year-old American pilot says that he has not been allowed to leave Antarctica since June. Influencer Ethan Guo was flying to all 7 continents to raise funds for cancer research when he made an emergency landing on an Antarctic island under Chilean rule. Guo says his initial plan was to fly to the most southern part of Argentina. That's one of the closest places places that someone can get to the Antarctica. And Chilean authorities accuse Guo of filing a false flight plan. So we will keep following that story. All right, Akira Kurosawa's Japanese classic High and Low is still a must-see among film fans. More than 6 decades after its release, now it's been reimagined by director Spike Lee in his latest team-up with Denzel Washington. It's a crucial part of this plot here, a character played by an acclaimed actor, Jeffrey Wright. You know him. ABC News Live Prime anchor Linsey Davis spoke with him earlier this week about starring in his very first Spike Lee joint.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thanks for having me.
So this is a remake of a Japanese film.
Yes.
When did you first see it? Had you seen that movie before you started shooting this one?
I'm ashamed to say I had not.
Okay.
Because it's a stunning film, Kurosawa. It's actually based on a book by a writer named Ed McBain. He was a New York writer. So in some ways, yes, Spike is reimagining Kurosawa's film, but it's in some ways bringing it back home to New York. But it's a wonderful film. It's very specifically Japanese, the original, and particularly the relationship between the character that Denzel plays and I play is a very specific Japanese, very specific kind of caste hierarchy.
What you think? I think you gotta be a little crazy sometimes in this world to get what you want.
And how does that transfer with having an all-black cast? Especially when you're talking about those issues of caste and hierarchy.
What we decided on here was that, yes, there's a hierarchy between the two characters. One is employer, one's employee, but there's a friendship.
What is that? Insurance. That's Jake from State Farm.
That predates that. They grew up together. Denzel happened to go on to become successful. I took a more circuitous route through the prison system. And so there's this tension there between, this friendship and these professional responsibilities, and then the further tensions are built on this inciting incident in the beginning of the film, in which his loyalty to that friendship, Denzel is tested. There's a kidnapping, and the question is, are you going to pay the ransom?
Right now, you're asking me for $17.5 million. That's all people do is ask me for stuff. Can you give me this? Can you give me that? They just want me to pay it.
So you'd worked with Denzel before, but this is your first Spike Lee joint.
Yes.
How did you end up as a part of it, and what did you think about working with Spike?
Well, Spike and I have threatened to work together many times before. I've known Spike almost since I moved to New York in the late 80s. He is so dedicated to film, to the process, and so dedicated to the city of New York. And to see him film in New York is really to understand him on a different level. In New York cinema, you have Scorsese and De Niro, and you have Spike Lee and Denzel. So I felt really privileged to be a part of that.
And you and I were talking about this earlier. Explain what it was like to work with your real son, playing father-son, the same duo from real life on screen.
It was really wonderful. It was, I'm so proud of him, and I had very little to do with him getting the role. Spike came up to me on a Friday. We were rehearsing. He said, "Yeah, Elijah's auditioning with Denzel on Monday." I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "Okay."
You already had the role.
I had the role. Yeah. I said, "Okay." So that following Monday, around the time they were supposed to be auditioning, I get a call, and I say, "Hello?" And it's Denzel. He says, "Oh man," he said, "he did the best he could, but I don't think it's gonna work out. Wish him luck, but he can't see it happening." And I said, "Wait a minute, man. You're calling from his phone. What's going on here?" So he said, "Yeah, man." He said he did wonderfully and he got the role. But beyond that, that's one thing, is getting the job. But what he did when the cameras rolled on set was really nuanced and subtle and authentic in a way that I found myself having to kind of step up my game. There was just a genuineness about his performance and a groundedness, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, okay, I got to keep up here. It was really fantastic. It was quite proud of him. Quite proud of him.
You have this movie out, 2 Emmy nominations, lots of acclaim, of course, from American Fiction. About to go to London to shoot. How do you describe this moment in your career?
And I could never stop thanking you for what you did for me.
I think what I most appreciate about where I am now is that I've been able to place myself in circumstances that are really fertile and creative and with quality collaborators like Spike Lee and Denzel Washington and my son. I'm going back to London tomorrow to continue work on The Agency. That's with Michael Fassbender and Richard Gere. We have a ball working together. I can't complain. Yeah, I've got some good work to do, and a fair amount of it.
Jeff, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
appreciate
Linsey.
it.
Thank you.
And he is such a cool guy. Our thanks to Linsey and Jeffrey Wright. Highest to Lowest hits theaters on Friday, and then it starts streaming pretty quickly on Apple TV Plus on September 5th. We're excited for that. Next tonight, the diamond in the rough. Literally, a girl finds a 2.3 carat diamond just sitting at her feet. ABC's World News Tonight anchor David Muir has this incredible story.
Tonight at the Crater of Diamond State Park in southwest Arkansas, an unbelievable discovery, a 2.3 carat white diamond. You may not know this is one of the few places where the public is actually allowed to search for diamonds themselves. Since 1972, visitors at the Crater of Diamond State Park have been sifting through about 37 acres, all hoping for some good luck. The park telling us about 140,000 people come every year. And get this, 1 to 2 diamonds are found every day, but rarely this size. More than 35,000 diamonds found since they started this. Michelle Fox from New York City had been searching for weeks for a diamond for her engagement ring. She was determined. And on her last day of searching, she looked down and saw the diamond glistening at her feet. And right here tonight,
hey, David.
Michelle telling us she's still in disbelief over her incredible find.
Hold on to being optimistic and bold, even though it's naive. I got really lucky and I worked hard.
And joining us too,
hey, David.
Sarah Reap from the Arkansas State Park, standing right where that diamond was found.
She came out here, put in a lot of hard work for several weeks, searched for her own diamond, and she was able to take it home to New York with her.
And tonight, the park now inviting everyone watching to come visit. And they're wishing you good luck too.
This is a really amazing, incredible place where the public can come and search for diamonds in its original volcanic source, and you guys get to keep what you find.
Such a great story. Our thanks to David Muir right there. All right, we have breaking Swiftie news here. The 12th album for Taylor Swift, The Life of a Showgirl, it will release on October 3rd. She made the announcement on her boyfriend Travis Kelce's podcast, New Heights. The 12-track album also includes a song featuring Sabrina Carpenter. That is the one that's called The Life of a Showgirl, who opened for Swift on the Eras Tour. Taylor also confirmed that she worked with producers Max Martin and Shel Beck. We predicted that last night here on Prime with Will Gans. She famously collaborated with them for albums 1989, Red, and Reputation. The superstar also talked about reclaiming her masters and how it changed her life to regain ownership after re-recording 4 of her albums. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Gio Benitez. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a good night.